we had a tornado warning a few months back, and it was coming off of the coast. And, and dude, we had to, in the middle of service, move everybody from the tent into this dome stage where all the bras are hanging. And it was the coolest picture because I'm up there preaching and you just see hundreds of thousands of dollars of bras hanging. And what I told everybody is like, look, today I'm going to just change the title of my sermon to The Devil's Booby Traps.
Welcome to Clock Into Your Calling, inspiring believers to live out their faith every day, not just on Sundays. This podcast is dedicated to help you break the sacred secular divide, sharpen your gifts, and take intentional steps that honor God. Discover how pastors, professionals, and industry leaders live faithfully, cultivate lasting change, and advance the kingdom of God. Thank you for joining us. If you find this helpful or know someone who would, please share, subscribe, and leave a like or comment below. God bless and enjoy the episode.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Season 2 of Clock Into Your Calling, where the mission here is to encourage, inspire, and equip you to live out your faith more than just Sunday, but Monday through Saturday as well. We really believe that if you only checking a box on Sunday, you're not living out all that God has for you, and your life could be different on the other side of your yes during the week. As you guys can see, we have a video version of a podcast today. We are joined here by Pastor Ben today. Make sure you guys stay tuned to the end for the challenge question, and also flip over to YouTube if you want the video version of this podcast. At the beginning here, I just want to thank you for any interaction, any like, share, subscribe, sharing this with a friend. I know it only takes a few moments, but it truly means so much to me, and it truly helps me reach more people and continue to put out content and have really interesting guests on here, like the episode that we have today. So our topic today is going to be church in a bar, ? And also, but in specific, we're going to be talking about church as a people, not only a building. So the church really isn't a place you go or just a building that we go to, but it's truly a people. To help me discuss this subject, we have Pastor Ben Ragsdale here with us today. Who better to talk to, as you guys will see as we get into more of his story and what he's doing now. But Pastor Ben is actually the lead pastor at Worship on the Water over there in Floribama. If you've never heard of that, like me, it's on the panhandle of Florida, kind of near the Alabama border. I'm sure we'll talk more about that today, but leading over thousands of people weekly. Pastor Ben is also the chief pastoral officer at Island Entertainment. He's been in ministry for only a little bit of time now, a little bit over 2 decades. So he's got some skin in this game. And not only on top of that, he also is a father of 3 girls and also a husband. But I want to thank you, Pastor Ben, for being here and welcome you to the show.
Thank you for having me, Ian. It's an honor.
Yeah, I'm excited for our conversation today. This has definitely been it's not good to really have favorites, but one of the funner conversations I've been looking forward to just because of how unique his situation is. So I want to ask you, Pastor Ben, this is a question that just to help us get to know you a little bit, knowing that you live on the coast, a lot of coastal activities. What is your favorite coastal activity for maybe Sabbath hobby or just for fun?
Fishing. Hands down, man. So when we say worship on the water, we are literally on the water. So if you look at a map of the Gulf, we are literally on the shores of the Gulf. And so where our church is situated, it's in the world famous honky tonk Floribama, which is on the actual Florida-Alabama state line. So we live on the Alabama side, but we do church on the Florida side. So man, on the weekends or any chance I get, I don't have a boat, but I have the next best thing, and that's a lot of friends with boats. And so we've got a lot of great friends that take us out. We go out for, pelagic fish or big game like marlin or tuna or different things like that, or everything from red snapper or red drum. There's a bunch of those types of fish that I love. But anything involving water or a boat or a fishing line, like, sign me up, man. It's the best.
Yeah, that's almost better than having a boat. There's
really
no maintenance.
No maintenance, man. And I got a lot of really good friends that don't even make me pay for gas sometimes. It's like, woo, thank you, Lord.
That's great.
That's good stuff.
That's great. Yeah, preparing for this, I didn't know you were all things country, like the whole
Big
everything.
Time. Bro, I'm a redneck. I'm a redneck, man. Like, it's amazing that God would use a foolish redneck like me to do what I get to do. It's wild.
Yeah, no, that's great. I know we were talking, just introducing the place of your leadership right now, but how many substantial people started their careers there? Who were you?
Man.
Who were we talking about before? Yeah.
So, Floribama, look it up at floribama.com. It's been around since 1964, and it's known for not only it's a dive or a roadhouse. It's one of America's last great roadhouses, they like to claim. It's consistently ranked one of the top 10 bars in the world year after year by all the major polls. And this is one of those places where 365 days a year, you've got 6 different stages that have 4 to 5 acts per day for 365 days, including holidays. And so it's just a constant rotating, environment where people are constantly coming in. And then we live next to a pretty big amphitheater. It seats about 10 to 12,000. So we have incredible acts that come into our territory or our region often, and they always end up at the Floribama. So you've got people. I mean, Riley Green got his start here. Ella Langley from Alabama. She's a big part of what's happened at the Floribama. Zach Top was there the other night. He played for several hours just randomly. So you can just go through different names. Kenny Chesney just did a private concert there not too long ago, but he's also done, I think it was his 20-year anniversary. And there were almost 60,000 people right on the beach for his, his anniversary concert. So just an incredible scene. And so it just goes to show the influence we've been trusted with. You got people that are just coming to check out this bar. And then you've got major, award-winning, Grammy award-winning artists that come through. You never know who you're going to meet.
Right. Yeah. And if you're like me, you're wondering what funny stories happen on a Sunday morning, which we'll touch later. Let's not get into those right now because I do want to hear. We could probably do a few episodes just
bro.
Just on that. So I want to ask you, Pastor Ben, I want to get to know you and your personal faith journey a little bit. I know that you had a transformational moment in your teen years, but talk to me about when your faith really became real and that really became something that you live by, not just on a Sunday, but daily in your life.
Absolutely, man. So I grew up in the South. I've never really lived outside of the state of Alabama, and hence the redneck, that will just fall out of my mouth today. So I apologize in advance. But, grew up here in the South, and even though we're in the Bible Belt, we're a family that didn't go to church consistently. I remember growing up, and we would go to church for vacation Bible school. I grew up in a very small town out in the woods. I grew up in a 40-acre field in a single wide trailer. I didn't even know what shoes were until I was 8,
Wow.
So I mean, we were just, that was kind of a joke, but I really, again, redneck.
Well, how are we supposed to know?
I know, thank you. I got to clarify. Somebody's out there going to go, this poor child. Don't call it. My mom was a good mom. She took care of me. I had shoes, but good people. My mom, she was divorced from my dad when I was 2. And so, I mean, she was my primary caregiver for just about my entire life. So she worked multiple jobs. I was really close to my grandparents. And so we just grew up in the country, but faith was definitely something we knew about. So we definitely knew about Jesus, but I can't say that I knew him. I didn't have a personal relationship, and really nobody in my family at that time did either. So, man, my mom got remarried. I had a stepfather who was just not a great man, and grew up through a lot of different scenarios that, we were placed in some positions of harm, and a lot of it, there's some abusive moments and things like that. It was crazy at such a young age. By the time my mom and my stepdad were divorced, I was 12 years old, going through a lot of stuff, going through depression. And I was really trying to look for love in all the wrong places. I didn't have a primary father figure, so I was chasing after and longing for somebody to love me. So, I mean, I was a class clown. I was the guy that was always seeking for attention, and very into sports. So it's just any accolades that came my way, it was just kind of continuing to puff me up. So I made a lot of stuff about me as I was growing up as well. So basketball was my favorite. I did football and a little bit of baseball, but I was terrible at baseball. I was a good first baseman because I'm a pretty tall guy.
Yeah.
But I just loved it. Just the activity. I love basketball. That was one of my favorites. But man, I was just lost, Ian, is the best way to say it. I was just so lost. And I was trying to fill this void of again, just the lack of a primary father figure. I had a dad, but his relationship were very surface level. I saw him on the weekends, every other weekend. And, he taught me to hunt, taught me to fish, and we had good times. But through all that, it just started really getting into alcohol, really getting into drugs, and really getting into girls at a very young age. I was doing stuff as a 12-year-old that would make a lot of adults, a lot of 40-year-olds blush probably. And so I was just headed down a really dark path. Like I said, struggling with depression, not really knowing what to do or where to go. I found my way at a youth camp. My mom actually was really, really concerned about some stuff I was getting into. So she
Yeah.
sent me to a camp that a friend of mine who was a senior in high school at the time, he's like, look, I'll pay Ben's way. If you can help him out with $50, I'll pay the rest of his way. And so it was a big deal. This was a senior in high school that was fronting a couple $100, and my mom found $50 and I got to go. And I went to that camp. At this
Wow.
time, I was 15 years old. And dude, I met Jesus, and he wrapped me up in his arms. Like, as a matter of fact, I literally just saw a picture the other day of this campground, and I zoomed in on this stage area. I could pick the exact spot that I gave my heart to Jesus, and I just was flooded with the emotions of what I felt that night. What I felt that night was the Father's love. There's just no way around it. It's hard to explain it, but I just felt for the first time that I belonged to somebody, that I wasn't just my own. And so it was there in that moment that I felt he called me. He called me into ministry. I didn't know what I experienced. I just know whatever I experienced, I wanted everybody else to experience it. And it was the love of the Father. So I came back, dude, on fire for the Lord, 15 years old. I was begging to preach everywhere I went. Dude, I was just in it. And
But like, preach on what? You're not into good things.
and right, dude. And everybody knew me, but it was rough because it was just, I didn't even know what preaching meant. I was just bubbling over, but I knew that I was devoting and committing my life. Like it was just because I had never felt it. When I did feel it, it was a no brainer. I just cannonballed into his grace, and I've never looked back. So long story short, I got called to ministry and saved the same night at this camp in North Alabama, and then came back. And by the time I was 16 years old, so not even a full year later, I was asked to be a part-time youth pastor at this youth ministry that I went to camp with. The youth pastor had resigned. And me and a friend of mine, under the leadership of the board at the time, they gave us free reign to start building this youth ministry. So at 16 years old, I was a part-time youth pastor. That continued throughout my high school career. I was 18 years old, pastoring youth ministry. And my wife came home. She was 2 years. We met in middle school. So my wife, Julie, she came back from college. We had two mutual friends die in a car accident. And she came back and she was like, where's the party at? I need to drown my sorrows or whatever. And all of our friends were like, the party's at church and Ben's preaching. Y'all should come to church. So she came to a youth revival we were hosting and gave her heart to Christ. And and then through that, because fun fact, Ian, I chased my wife Julie since I met her at 12. I chased her until I was 18 years old. But it was because I had committed my life to Christ. Then she committed her life to Christ, and God brought us together. He gave me the desires of my heart. And that desire was Julie. And we've been married 19 years, 3 beautiful daughters, man. And so just all we've known, in our entire relationship was Jesus. He has literally been at the center of our lives, of our relationship, individually and collectively. And so, man, we moved to Birmingham, moved back to the area. We were on staff at a church for 16 years before we took over this one just 2 years ago.
Wow. That's great. I think your story exemplifies God's grace, literally in a nutshell. And I find it so special how if you would have talked to maybe young Ben a day before that camp and talked to Ben about, hey, what are you going to do what do you want to do for the rest of your life? You might have had the craziest answer. And it's crazy how God can capture you just in an instant, just like that. And it's so special that you can vividly remember that. And honestly, too, maybe tap into that moment sometimes when there's maybe a little bit of doubt coming in.
Yeah. Well, Ben, I need it now.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I was zooming into this picture literally about 3 or 4 days ago. And just the wave of emotions of God capturing my heart that night. Because I was suicidal. I was not in a good place where I cannot imagine where I would be or if I would even be here if it wasn't for his grace. And so, like I said, when I committed my life to him, I meant it. I felt like
Yeah, it's
like
great.
he deserved everything I had to offer, although it was not much. Like it was
Mm,
again just this measly little old single wide trailer life that I had.
hmm
That I just said, God, whatever I have, I give it to you. Use me if you
Yeah.
want to. And he has now for well over 2 decades.
Yeah, that's great. I love that you said even if it wasn't a lot. And I think the misconception is if someone gives a tenth of their income and it's like 10 times what you can give,
Man,
that they're actually doing more. When
that's
you're
right.
giving all of what you have, it's not about how much you give, it's how much percentage are you giving? Are you
That's
giving
right.
your whole life to Christ or just a portion of it? That's such a great example. So I want to ask you, you touched a little bit on working in ministry now, like I said, only for a little bit, but it's been over 2 decades now. Was there ever a time where your past or fear or maybe some of the stuff that you used to do felt like it could disqualify you from reaching people, from presenting God's word, knowing that you had this crazy past before Christ?
Yeah. There were definitely some times where doubt and shame really started to creep back in. And I was listening to Josh Howerton. He's one of my favorite communicators right now. He's did a podcast a year or two ago, and he broke down the word tetelestai, which is the
Mm,
words. It was a term that Jesus used when he said, "It is finished." That word translated, that phrase translated is tetelestai. And essentially he goes through it, does a way better job than I ever could. But he just communicates that it was a judicial term. It was also like paying a bill, like that, a receipt, your
yeah.
bill's been paid in full, your sentence has been bought, and paid for. And it was also a term used in war for complete victory. And gosh, I was just thinking about that, like you said, that 15-year-old kid that had done so much for such a young age. And again, just thinking, I've got nothing to offer him but my yes. And
Mm,
that's been the theme of my life since that moment. He
yeah.
asked, "Will you go where I take you?" And I said, "Yes." "Will you do what I asked you to do?" I said, "Yes." "Will you be mine completely?" I said, "Yeah, yes, whatever you want from me.
Yeah.
You have paid a price I could never pay. You've paid a debt that I could never overcome, and you've done all that for me, this little old kid from nowhere, Alabama. Yeah, I'll give you my yes, I'll give you my everything." That's been the theme of my life. And so, man, I can't say that again, there was some shame and there's still stuff, man, look back and go, God, what an idiot. Still,
hmm
like Paul, like I feel like I'm the chief of sinners most days. I'm not perfect. I am jacked up.
Yeah.
I tell our people all the time at our church, like, we are a church full of imperfect people. We are led by an imperfect pastor. If you ever
Yeah.
feel like you have gone and found the perfect church, y'all better stay out of it because you'll screw it up, because we're
Mm,
all imperfect people.
yeah. It's
But
good.
gosh, I look back and go, man, I'm just so grateful that, like I said, the best illustration is like doing a cannonball off of a high dive at a swimming pool, man. Like I went all in. And I
Yeah.
think because of that, the enemy tried to wear me out with my past. Somebody taught me that. You've probably heard this. There's a reason your front windshield is bigger than your rearview mirror. I just learned
Mm,
any time in my life when I've tried to focus on what's behind me, I wind up in a ditch, or I get in a wreck or something goes wrong. And there's a reason why that front windshield, you're supposed to focus on what's in front of you, not behind you. Again, all of that's
right.
been bought, paid for. It is complete. It is finished. To telestai. And that's what I've learned to walk in. And, also learned too, man, when the enemy tries to remind you of your past, it's best to remind him of his future. And
Mm.
there's been
Oh,
so
that's
many
good.
times where my past has tried to creep in or overwhelm me. And it's just like, no, I belong to somebody. And he
Yeah.
he paid for my past. He paid for that. He my shame hung on that cross with him. He died for it. He conquered it. And I refuse to live in that past.
I love that. I love kind of the location and time when God captured your heart. And I say this because I think it's a lot easier to give someone our yes when we don't have much, because sometimes the blessing and the curse of obtaining material items, obtaining a nice career, a nice job, a nice car, we start to hold on to those things, I think, a little bit tighter than if we know we don't have much and we're giving God what we have. But you setting that up earlier, it's a lot easier. Hey, God, you can have my flip flop or whatever you had at that time, because I know you love your flip flops.
Big time.
And I've heard that you preach in them, just saying.
There
But
they are. Yeah, that's what I wore today.
that's why we're doing this online. So you guys didn't see his feet hanging out.
Thank you. You're welcome, world.
You're welcome. But I think, the concept is he's preparing your heart for later. That way, later, when you are going after the things of God, and if he gives you a blessing of a certain measure, or he provides for you in a certain way, those things, the muscle is already being worked, and it's already ready to, I'm consistently giving, no matter, because I know who it came from the whole time. I know that God gave me it, so I know I can freely give it back to him. He freely gave, so I can freely give back to him. So
Absolutely.
I want to talk, let's transition further into our conversation today about before we talk about truly about like where your church specifically meets. I know we touched on it a little bit in the past, but let's talk a little bit about what church actually is. What do you think about, why do you think we often connect church with a building rather than a certain group of people?
Yeah. You look back when the New Testament church was birthed, they were in the marketplace. They're in the middle of this incredible Passover celebration. I mean, there's thousands of people from every culture. They go and they have that upper room moment after Jesus ascended. And I even love, if you go back and look in Acts chapter 1, Jesus ascends into the heavens and an angel has to appear to the disciples because they're just standing there looking up. And it's almost like this isn't a direct quote, but it's almost like the angel's like, what are y'all looking at? What are y'all standing here with your heads in the clouds for? There's stuff to do, guys.
Right. Yeah.
Go. And I just feel like that's, when you look at how it was birthed, I was joking with our people the other day, like I love that 2/3 of God's name is go. I love when Jesus gave the Great Commission. He said, go, therefore.
Yeah.
Like you've got to go. And I feel like when it started versus somehow along the way, man and tradition, which is what Jesus came and conquered, right? He loved ticking off traditional religious people.
Yeah.
And I feel like somewhere along the way that crept back in. And because of that, these grand cathedrals were built, all the stained glass. So you go throughout Europe, where these people were presenting the gospel and gave their lives for it, by the way. Somehow along the way, comfort crept in, and through that comfort, cathedrals were built. And I just think, you study the history of the church, it just became about buildings and religion and rituals. And I loved what God has been doing over the last several decades about demolishing those traditions and demolishing the rituals and bringing people back into relationship. Again, like I said, even growing up, I knew about Jesus, but there is a direct contrast between the person that knew about Jesus and the person that knew Jesus. The kid that knew about Jesus, yeah, whatever. But the kid that met him and knew him and found out, man, he knew my name, everything about me. He calls me son. I'm adopted into his family. Like I'm a co-heir with Christ. Like to get that type of like intimate relationship with him and to dive headfirst into a relationship, that's what I feel like people miss oftentimes. And we get comfortable, especially in America, in our Western mindset of like, goodness, we just got to go to church. We check a box if I go to a building. And I just feel like we're missing it when it becomes about the ritual again. And through our rituals, man, that's where cathedrals were constructed. And through those cathedrals, that's where comfort has become this pandemic that's crippled the body of Christ, I feel like, So everything that in my ministry career, even as that young redneck kid, man, everywhere we'd ever been has been in an uncommon place. And I love that. We've been able to help establish the church in YMCAs and public smoothie shops and theaters and maximum security prisons. And so for God to begin to call us out of our comfort, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with traditional churches or buildings. Don't get me wrong at all. God's using those things. If it weren't for the local church in those buildings, I mean, there's millions and millions and millions of billions of dollars that are changing lives all over. There's, these incredible auditoriums where people, they may not come sweat in a bar, but man, they'll go with their friend who their friend's life was changed because of this church. So don't get me wrong, God's using buildings, but I just think when you get to the roots of where that New Testament church was birthed, and the purity of it is to go where the people are. And that's our context. And it's, again, how God, I believe, wired me personally, how he's wired all of us, is to go to the people, especially in the South where I'm at. We had so many people, like, growing up, when I finally got involved in church, I'd hear preachers say, if Jesus were alive today or walking the streets today, he wouldn't be here in our church. He would be at the bar. He'd be on the street corner. He'd be in the food pantry. He'd be wherever the hurting are. There is something about just that mandate as a follower of Christ to go and make disciples of everyone we could come in contact with, even if that means going into uncomfortable places.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. I do agree with you. And I think it also is special that we have those different options, if you will, as a place to go to church. Because you're right. Some people like the nice AC, especially if you're in Florida like us, where it's summer right now. And listen, I mean, you're going to be a couple pounds lighter when you leave church, and
Literally.
And that's great. But you're right, though. It's good to have those options, and there's not, as long as they're keeping the main thing, I think that's where the healthiness comes from in those environments. Right. But you're right. When we're so used to it being so comfortable, and there's never the going out and making disciples of all people, we could just easily transition that opportunity just to checking a box off of a checklist on Sundays that we're doing. So
that's right.
Let's talk about your establishment right now, being where you're the lead pastor. So talk to me about where the vision, you touched on it a little bit, but maybe if you want to go into a little bit more detail on where did the vision come from and the calling come from? Well, of course, by God, but to take on a responsibility as a lead pastor that meets in a bar.
Yeah. So our church was founded 15 years ago, and it was out of, just a call to be the church and mobilize the church. We have a statement that the local church is the hope of the world, and I believe that. But to take it a level deeper, I love that the mobilized church is the hope of the world. And again, to our point we were just discussing, man, when you get a church that is stagnant and there's no outflow, man, that's where we really start to get a lot of spiritual obesity in our lives right now, if we're not careful, because we're just consuming. And I think a lot of the modern day churches have fallen into that trap where we're just consuming. There's no outflow. There's a difference between a river and a swamp, right? A river is going to be filled with life, and a swamp's typically going to be filled with death and nasty stuff, right? So I want to always make sure. You like that?
It's a good redneck example right there.
It could have been worse. I tamed it down a little bit. But it's just one of the, I could have started slur, like, I start sounding like a banjo. Yeah. I'm sorry, but I get excited, Ian. The fact that we're called out, that's the called out ones, right? As Christians, when Jesus even said, like, I'm going to build my church, the gates of hell aren't going to prevail against it. That word church is ecclesia, and which is it's a public gathering. That's a very public term. It's a group that is not confined. It's a group that is out in the marketplace, in the public square. And that's what, when this church was birthed, it was out of a heart to see the ecclesia, the mobilized church, in the public settings, in especially in a setting where not a lot of people are going to go and say, we should plant a church in this world famous honky tonk bar. It was out of that heart to see, like, if Jesus were walking the streets, where would he be? Let's go. So this incredible church in our area, they planted it 15 years ago. It's been through different leaders and different transitions. But it was about 2 years ago that we got the call. We were very comfortable. We had been on staff at a local church for 16 years in this area. And we got the call to come and help establish health and structure and leadership as this church was getting ready to go into its next season. And so it's been really neat. It was out of a heart to meet people where they're at. You look through scripture, the woman at the well and the disciples in the boats, and, just Jesus went to these people. And more than that, like he went to people nobody else wanted to go to. And that's really one of my favorite things about Jesus is, like, out of all of his incredible titles, he's our Prince of Peace. He's the Savior of all mankind. Like, he's the creator of the universe, but he's the friend of sinners. I love that title about Jesus, because it says to me, he was willing to get messy. He was willing to sit down with prostitutes and tax collectors. And he was willing to be a friend of sinners. And what I loved about that is he absolutely preached truth. He was truth. He was grace, but he was truth. He was both. It wasn't either or. He was grace and truth to these people, so much so that he could sit with them, call out their sin, and they were still coming to him. Just by the thousands, people were flocking to this man from Galilee. And I just love that. And I think that's such a good challenge that we try to live as we carry out this mission that was birthed from this church that started our church 15 years ago, is let's go to where the people are. But better yet, let's go into places that, our mission statement is we're uncommon people carrying uncommon faith into uncommon places. We are looking for more bars to plant more churches. We're looking for more liquor stores to have more prayer gatherings. We're looking for, more restaurants to have small groups. Like
you have to sell beer there to create interest.
Baptisms and bushwhackers, buddy. Like, come on, we got all kinds of stuff. So it's meet people where they're at. That's our heart, and that was the heart of what birthed this church and birthed this movement. Is to get into the marketplace. Again, like just the New Testament church. Let's don't sit around looking up with our heads in the clouds, waiting for Jesus or a pastor or some physical building to do anything. Let's mobilize the body of Christ and let's get out and let's do something and make an impact.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I think a lot of times church and a bar are never in the same sentence together. But
that's right.
Give me a couple minutes on opportunities that would exist here that wouldn't exist elsewhere.
So again, what I love is we go to where the people are. So like I said, 365 days a year, this place is open. It never stops. The last call on a Saturday night could sometimes be 4 a.m. So people are literally cleaning and pressure washing the deck. We meet under an open air tent. It's in the largest stage of the venue, and it seats about 350 people comfortably. But we have picnic tables, and there's a bar that is open for business. A bar opens for business while we're doing church. So this is open to the public. You do have people that come in constantly, and would be one of those opportunities where you got people that are coming in not knowing that there's a church that meets here.
Wow.
Never heard about it. And we even say this every day, every Sunday, you're not here by accident. So if you're standing in line right now, if you're up in the main bar listening to our message, if you're standing out, we call it the Tannin for Jesus section because there's no cover. You're literally out in the sun. The sun is beating down on you. It's 109 degrees today. And there are people back there just drenched in sweat. They're in their bathing suits, bro. Like, it is wild. It's church in the wild. But we say it, you're not here by accident. Right. And it doesn't matter if you drove here, if you walked here, or if you woke up here, you're welcome here. And awesome. We say it because people literally wake up there at this bar. We've had guys that have woke up in the parking lot across the street. They spent the night there. They couldn't drive home. They woke up, came inside to get a glass of water, and now they're serving on our media team. They've been the camera guys for the last 15 years. Some of them are now our greeters. We've had musicians that we've been able to minister to the night before where we've been able to call out and go, man, you got the gift of God on your life. Like the way you play that guitar, you're not meant to play that just for this environment. You're meant to lift up the King of Kings. And so we've seen people that thought their gift that God gave them was dead, or that God could never use them in a church. And we're able to say, he might not be able to use you in a traditional church. He could use you in this one, buddy, because we meet right over there on that bar stage every single Sunday. So come on. And we got processes, and we take care of people. We're making sure that they're spiritually mature. We're walking through them spiritually and emotionally and all that, of course. But now we're reaching people right where they're at. And we had a guy from New Hampshire that came in, Ian, just a couple weeks ago. He didn't know that we were having church there, and I watched him. He and his wife came in, and he's just clam chowder guy, but just really rough. He's tatted up, sleeveless shirt, goatee, older guy. He came in, and he was like, I watched him. He grabbed 2 drinks from the bar because where our church sits, there's an open bar right off to the side of the tent. He came in. I watched him get 2 drinks, and he takes a sip, and he's just standing there. He's got a mean look on his face, and he's just listening to the music. And he takes another step forward into the tent area, takes another drink, says up to his wife, takes another step forward, and you can start hearing or see him lean in a little bit. Well, he got too close, and one of our ushers grabbed him and brought him up to the only 2 seats left in the whole tent. Wow. We got people everywhere. Only 2 seats left, just happened to be on the very front row. And I watched this guy with 2 drinks in his hand who
Yeah.
looked mean and mad and confused. I came to get a drink, and what is this? I watched him weep the entire service. And he came and found me
Praise
afterwards,
God.
and he goes, Pastor, I think he's like, Pastor or Mister or whatever I'm supposed to call you. I don't even know what I'm supposed to call you. But listen, I don't know what this was, but
Yeah.
whatever it was, I want more
Wow.
of it. And he said,
Great.
I've not been in church in over 30 years, and I never, ever thought that I would make it back to one. I never thought I'd go through the doors of another one. And I'm so glad I found this one. Better
Wow.
yet, I'm so glad this one found me. And
Wow.
that's why we do it. I can tell you there's something like that happens every single week. And we're watching people, the light come on, people in their teens, people in their 80s. We baptized a lady on Easter Sunday who was 86 years old. We're walking through people in their 70s that have never read their Bible before, because that's what's cool about our town too. We're in a tourist town. It's a town of 8,000 people, but we have 8 million visitors that come through every single year. 2 of those 8 million come directly through the Floribama. We're situated in an area where we get to reach our entire community and the surrounding areas. But again, even though we're going to the people, God brings them to us still. And so we've got people that attend our church online every week. Over 3,000 people watch our services consistently. I've got meetings this week with people that are living in Indiana and Michigan and North California, but they call Worship on the Water their home church.
Wow.
And they're locked in every week. So I could go down the list of all the opportunities where we're meeting people where they're at.
Yeah.
We're meeting people that may not even live in our area, but have been looking for a life-giving church. And then we also get the chance to pastor employees, 1,200 employees that work in our organization. And I've been named the chief pastoral officer to figure out how we can integrate faith into the marketplace. And so we say it like this: we're able to help people that if they need help, if there's a need, we can help them in crisis. If they need somebody to talk to, we can put them in a discipleship group. If they need to figure out that this world is bigger than their little bartending job, we're wanting to send them on missions trips.
Yeah,
and if they got questions about Jesus, we can help with that too. And so it's one of those things. It's faith friendly. It's not faith forced, but we are integrating faith driven principles in a world famous bar. And if you could do it in a bar, you could do it anywhere. So we're ministering to the employees, we're ministering to the tourists, we're ministering to the local community. We're a church that has outreach all the time. Like, we're an outreach ministry that just so happens to do a church service on Sundays, so there's opportunity after opportunity to just meet where the people are at and not get sucked in to just being our tiny little consumer, us for and no more gatherings. No, we are constantly, it's our heart. We want to do more bar churches all along the Gulf Coast. And we are going to do everything short of sin to see that come to pass.
That's so good. What an opportunity that you guys have been given by God. And I'm imagining the first person to want to plant a church in a bar. And they're like, dude, there's literally so many better places. Like, what? Why? Like, anywhere else. Anywhere.
That's what's crazy too. When the guys reached out to the owner of this bar 15 years ago, he had like, hey, you think it'd be okay? And the owner reluctantly was like, yeah, sure. Like, he describes it like, as he's saying it, like, almost wish I could grab that back. And what's so crazy, dude, is like, he was expecting 30 people to show up, and I think 300 people showed up the first Sunday.
Wow.
And we haven't let up since. Now we're ministering to 1,200 people in person weekly. We've got another 3,000 online. We got another 1,200 employees that we're ministered to on a consistent basis. That owner, by the way, gave his life to Jesus and is just passionately living for the Lord.
So
He's one of our trustees of the church now. He's an incredible church partner, and
that's awesome,
and brother in the faith.
Man.
And so it's just cool to see that opportunity, but it just started with that mandate to understand, man, the mission is everywhere. It doesn't have to be confined. We don't just want to build church buildings. We want to build people, and we want to be the church, the mobilized church.
Yeah, that's good. And I think at the same time, we're talking about all this great stuff happening. I assuming it's not always good, but I can assume there would be some flip side reactions to people in the bars as well, because not everybody's going to hear this, grab 2 beers and go sit in the front row at your service. There's definitely going to be probably some opposition to, especially merging like you did and coming in and taking over an establishment. But Any funny stories come to mind of just experiences that you want to discuss and share?
Well, you just never know what you're going to walk into, so it is
literally,
although it's got we've got an incredible partnership. So we get to use the sound system. So if you're a part of a portable church or been a part of one before, I did it for several years at my last church. It was one of those things where you had to back up all these trailers, set up all this equipment. When it comes to portable settings, it's not that bad. So we set up chairs, we get to plug into they've donated the sound system to us. Again, they allow us to use this property, this world famous property, rent free, by the way. So it's just a testament to the beautiful partnership and how God's literally allowed us to do this. But you never know what you're going to walk into, even though it's not this massive, extensive setup process. Again, this morning at 6 a.m., it's already 100 degrees. There's times where we're having to literally move women's undergarments off of the stage to set up our instruments, man. We're having to, ask people to move over, hey, wake up, buddy. We got church to set up for. But one of the things, if you're unfamiliar with the Floribama, there's one of the stages is called the dome stage. And in this dome stage, I just want you to picture probably $200,000 worth of bras are hanging from the ceiling. And I'll send you some pictures of it. And so one of the funnest stories is like a couple of months ago, we had a tornado warning. And again, we're under a tent. It's really sturdy, but it's outside, dude. We've got birds that'll dive bomb me while I'm preaching. So like some people have to deal with babies crying. I've got to deal with birds attacking me. Like I've had them crap on my shoulders. My wife's preached before. She had them land on the pulpit, so like we've had like crazy stuff like that.
Yes.
But, we had a tornado warning a few months back and it was coming off of the coast. And, and dude, we had to, in the middle of service, move everybody from the tent into this dome stage where all the bras are hanging. And it was the coolest picture because I'm up there preaching and you just see hundreds of thousands of dollars of bras hanging. And what I told everybody is like, look, today I'm going to just change the title of my sermon to The Devil's Booby Traps. And so that's the stuff that we get away with there. But I mean, we've had everything from crazy people come in. We've had people stand up in the middle of service and say that, I'm a heretic. And, we've had protesters across the street with bullhorns yelling at people as they're coming into church, so we've had those fun things, but preaching under, couple $100,000 of bras was, that one was cool. But, and also we do baptisms every Sunday in the Gulf. We have at least one baptism just about every Sunday. We've baptized almost 400 people the last 2 years. And we just seen like, even being out there, on double red flag days, which if you're unfamiliar with the coast, that's where it's illegal to get in the water. And, we just ask for forgiveness rather than permission. We get in really carefully. We haven't lost a person yet. And, and we always say that. We joke about it. We're like, this is how you know that this is real. Like you're dedicated in your faith. Like you better be serious because if you go under, you may not come back up on rough storm days. We also get to boast that we're the only baptism in America that's got dolphins in it. We're dodging dolphins, jellyfish, and stingrays every Sunday. And it's pretty special.
That's amazing. Well, it's so cool. Like and I know every church has like funny stories, but man, hopefully anybody else's church.
Well, dude, and on rough days, our prayer room, when we were doing response for the altar, like we're sending people to the bra room, and we just like for prayer, if you need prayer, go into the bra room. And I said it today. I'm like, I guarantee you, there's not another church in America that said that statement today. And then to be able to follow it up with like, go get prayer. We offer prayer in the bra room. It's got great support. There's a lot of great support in there. So that's it.
Oh my gosh. That's hysterical. I know. No, it's not that. I feel like you got to lean into it. You got to lean into the jokes and everything. And also you can't get lost. Everyone's got to know where the bra room is.
That's right.
So if you're new to church, you might have been to the bar before, which is good. But let's go ahead and one more question before we get into our conclusion here today. I want to talk to you leading a church where, especially in this specific environment, how do you create an environment that promotes authenticity and allows people to really bring down their their Sunday shields and bring their authentic self into church.
Yeah, well, one of our core values is real community, real people. And it's one of the most attractive features of our church. We are about preparation, not perfection. So you're going to see people that walk into our church, and again, we just tell people, like, God loves you just the way you are, come as you are,
Yeah.
but he loves you too much to leave you that way. And
Yeah.
so you get to come as you are, but you get to leave different. You get to leave because he is here. We're lifting him up. Where two or three are gathered. You go through all those verses, like, when we lift him up, he inhabits the praises of his people. And that tent may be used for hell 6.5 days of the week. But for 6 hours, we are establishing the kingdom of God
Great.
in that place, and people's lives are transformed. And so what's really beautiful to see is you see, again, like, I'm typically in a t-shirt and flip-flops, and we look like everybody. I'm extremely vulnerable in my messages. I'm transparent almost to a fault of, like, I'm telling my shortcomings. I'm telling my real stories. I'm telling them stories of pain. Because I think a lot of times we put communicators up on a pedestal and we think
Yeah.
they've got their lives together. But man, when we're able to again, when we say we meet you where you are, we're willing to climb down in the trenches with you and show you, like, look, we're just like you. Just
Yeah, that's
because
great.
I have pastor in front of my name, it doesn't make me any holier than any of you. And I intentionally, I try to take myself off of the pedestal as much as possible.
Yeah.
We're prepared, but you walk into our environments, man, and there's lime wedges and straws and cups, and we clean it up, but it's just like,
Yeah.
it's raw. And there's just such a beauty of that rawness, of
Yeah.
how unpolished it is. And we don't want to change that. We want to use it,
Yeah, that's
and
great.
again, we're uncommon. I don't need to look like the churches that are right down the road from us. As a matter of fact, we send people to these other churches. We partner with them. We find out, like, what church is killing it with kids ministry right now. And so we got families that come with young kids that were like, look, we don't have a kids ministry right now, but this church does. Let me send you there. My friend Sean, they're killing it right now. Go to his church. Go to Church at the Shores, man. They're blowing it up. Like, we're pumping up our friends. There's
Yeah, that's
unity.
great.
We're sending people to these other churches. Gosh, it's just so beautiful to know that, man, we are who we are, and that's what's attractive, is that, man, it's not polished. It's real. I'm real. I'm going to be vulnerable with people. I'm going to sit with people in their mess. I'm going to share my messes with them. Sometimes people are like, man, Pastor, you're a jacked up dude. I'm like, yes, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Like, how good is God that in his grace and sovereignty, he would pick somebody like me to do this. And that's what's so special, is we're overly vulnerable and transparent. We try to be as authentic as we can.
Yeah, that's great. I'll just add one thing, and then I want to go into our encouragement for the audience that we have today. But I love that you guys don't try to polish where you are, because if it was too polished, you would get a lot less people coming that don't know there's a church happening there. Because I think if you stumble there, you might think there's a concert going on and Pastor Ben's hosting, and Riley Green, like you said before, is about to come on stage. It could literally feel like that because it doesn't look different. It doesn't look all put together. And I think that's such a easier entry point for someone who knows, hey, if you're on the outside, just like I was going to church maybe for the first time, where, look, I know I don't have it all together. I want to give this thing a try, but I'm not maybe prepared. I'm too broken, or I'd done too much in the past, where I know that this environment looks a lot probably more welcoming than a nice polished, what we see all over YouTube, Instagram, every social media, where everything is just perfectly lights cutting everywhere. Everyone's in a suit and tie. No one says a word during church, and everybody shows up 30 minutes earlier with no parking trouble. Like, that's just not the reality. And that's what's so cool about you opening the door to those types. And it probably is a lot more welcoming. So I want to ask you, Pastor Ben, I'd love to encourage the audience as we kind of wrap up our episode on the church being more than just a building or a tent in your case. But what encouragement would you give to someone who's maybe just doing the box checking Sunday thing, but what fruit is on the other side of following Jesus Monday through Saturday or Monday through Sunday, not just Sunday morning?
Man, just everybody is a minister. I just want that to be said loud and clear. Like I said a second ago, just because you don't have the word pastor in front of your name, just
Yeah.
because you don't have a podcast that you're leading, whatever, you are a minister. And man, the mission is everywhere. And again, going for you, listener, could look like the water cooler at your workspace. It could look like the baseball
Yeah.
field where your son's having practice. It could look
Yeah.
like, a fishing trip with your coworkers. It could look like
Yeah,
your
that's
family
good.
gatherings around Thanksgiving. Like God may be calling you to be a light in some of the darkest places, and those darkest places may be where you work Monday through Friday.
That's
And
good.
man, you just got it in you, and it's time for people to awaken to that we are the church, we are his bride, we are part of the body of Christ. And man, wherever he sends us, we need to go, and we need to be willing to share our stories. We need to be willing to share
Yeah.
what he did for us, where he found us, how he found us, and who we are now. And I would just
Right.
encourage you, don't just check a box on a Sunday. Don't just think it's okay to just be a believer. Demons are believers. They believe in
Ooh.
Jesus.
They know the scripture. Yeah.
They know it backwards and forward. They know him. Listen, believing in him and following him are two different things. When you
Yeah.
learn to follow him, and everything about you looks like him, sounds like him, you pick up his character, you pick up his competencies,
Yeah.
and that flows out of a Sunday into your workplace, into the ball fields, into wherever you're going. And I just encourage you, listener, to take that and look at the people around you that God's trusted you with. Don't waste those opportunities. Don't
Yeah.
waste those moments at work or wherever you're at. Be who he's called you to be. Follow him, and you'd be surprised where he leads you and the people he leads you to.
That's great. Oftentimes, too, adding on to that is that it doesn't often require extra trips. It just all it requires is you stewarding what he's already given you. You
That's
already
right.
go to work. You already
Yeah.
go to the grocery store. You already have to take your son there, but maybe stop and see how one of the other parents is doing.
That's right.
In the bleachers while you're there for an hour.
And again, like we said it earlier, but God will honor your yes. Like be sensitive to his voice. That's why having a relationship with him is so important.
Mhm.
You might be driving to one grocery store and he's telling you, no, I want you to go to this one across town. And how many times did we see Jesus go out of his way to intentionally go find somebody? God might be calling you to go out of your way too. And I encourage you, when you go out of your way, walk slowly. When you give him your yes, okay, yes, I'll go to this store across town. Why? Man, walk slowly. That's one of the most game-changing principles God's called me to live by. And I encourage you to just walk slowly in the rooms that he trusts you with. If it's your work, if it's your family, if it's the ball fields, whatever, the people that are around you, he's given you these people. He trusts you with these people. Walk slowly, be attentive. You look at the 3 years of Jesus's ministry where he was in full-time, nonstop ministry with these disciples for 3 years. Not once is there record of him ever being in a rush. And I think oftentimes we get caught up in checking boxes and rushing from one room to the next, that we miss the people that he's put in front of us, that he's called us to change.
Yeah, that's great. In a busy world, that's a great reminder. So I want to ask the audience, we have a reflection challenge question at the end of every episode. So the question for today is going to be, are you limiting where God can move because you've decided where he could move? And kind of what I mean by that, we just touched on it, but is there any place that you are a part of right now, listener, as you are part of in work, at the gym? We talked about different examples of wherever you may find yourself that your faith isn't. Maybe it's in the car, maybe it's at home, maybe it's left at the church Sunday morning, or it's not taking any part in any of your week. But I would just ask you, and then the kind of the follow-up would be, how could you start to invite him into those moments? And I think it's always a great reminder to think about, if you told maybe your coworker that you were a Christian, would they be surprised? Not because you have to wear Jesus on your t-shirt and get a tattoo, but in the sense of, are you embodying him? Are you living as he lived and trying to emulate Jesus, as we're all called to do? So I want to thank you, Pastor Ben, for being here today. What a fun, special episode, as expected, as we were going to get into some fun and funny stuff. And hopefully you guys got something about the church being more than just a building. It's more than a place, but it's following you. But thank you, Pastor Ben, for your yes to lead a unique church, to go into ministry for all this time, and also for being on this podcast today.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you guys so much for being here. And just a reminder at the end that you've been given a purpose, a calling, and an assignment only you can fulfill, uniquely scripted to you based off your gifts that God has given you. So don't settle for the ordinary. but step into the extraordinary that God wants to do in your individual life. Thank you guys so much for being here, and God bless.
Thank you for watching. See you next time.